Hi, welcome. My name's Michelle Montana. This is my interior design YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for sticking around or stopping by. I hope that those of you that are here for the first time, I don't know why you're here right now for the first time, go watch something else and then come back. I've had a couple of requests over the months to talk about my career history because it's been pretty crazy. I'm aware of that. I kind of call myself a chronic gig worker because typically I've always worked like more than one job at a time, or I've always had like side hustles and stuff like that. I've always just liked a lot of different things, so it's hard for me to choose a career, to be honest. Like, I've just always found myself in different situations, and I feel like half of my career has been by accident. So without further ado, I'm just gonna get right into it. Those of you that have been curious, now you're gonna know. Now you're gonna know my life story. So, I graduated from Point Park University in 2016 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in photography. I knew while I was in school that I probably wasn't going to really use my degree in the sense that I knew that I didn't want to be a photographer. I dabbled with the idea of going to like art school for like my master's and stuff, and I ended up doing my thesis in using sculpture. So I had a really well-rounded education when it came to art in general. So even though I knew I didn't really want to like take photos anymore, I knew that it would be a good tool for me for the rest of my life to just have that, you know, in my belt. Knew that I wanted to do something creative. I just didn't really know what. And after I graduated, my roommate and I at the time started a vintage company called Basil. She was still in one more semester and I graduated, so I kind of was like focused full time on Basil, and I really thought that that was going to be what I did forever. You know, I wanted to like do kind of like creative flips with clothing and stuff like that. And my roommate, we ended up kind of like splitting and not continuing with Basil together, but I still continued to do it. So to make money to pay rent, I was working in various restaurants and whatever at the time, barista. I had like multiple jobs. Like, I never had just one job. Like, I always had like a couple of jobs. And this I did for like about like 2 years, I'd say. Gets a little fuzzy. Probably my last restaurant job was like, you know, going toward, yeah, it had to have been like 2018. So yeah, 2 years of bouncing around different restaurants. Then I started working at Anthropology. And so while I was there, I feel like I had to have been around the same time that I introduced a home section for Basil. So Basil, I started getting into releasing seasonal collections. So whether it was like a whole vibe that all these like curated pieces matched each other, all these curated clothing items all went together. They all had like the same kind of concept behind them. Sometimes I would like make clothing pieces. So that's all like scattered throughout like 4 years I did Basil, which it's so hard to talk about everything because everything was happening at the same time. So just know that Basil went on for about 4 years. I'll let you know when it ended, but we're not there yet. So I was making clothes, putting out seasonal releases. So I would do like a spring, summer, fall, winter, but then sometimes I would do like an in-between. I'll probably try to post some of the like footage in here if I can. I don't know how much time I have to edit this, so you can do your own digging. I'll put my Basil Instagram account below if you'd like to take a look at some of that stuff. Back to Anthropology. I was working at Anthropology and I always loved clothing and home stuff like my whole life. So, you know, when I was a kid, it was like, I'm either going to be a fashion designer or I'm going to be an architect. Like, those were the two things that I thought I was going to do. And then I think I got into photography And that's what kind of led me down. I was like, into fashion photography and stuff like that. So fashion seemed like a little bit more my focus, only because I didn't think that I could do the math to do architecture. And I don't think I really knew much about like interior design as a job to like pursue that. Like, I think I just like, I don't know that I realized that that was a thing, I don't think I realized that that was an option. And I think that if I had, maybe I would have gotten to interior design a lot sooner in life, but I don't know. I mean, the most interior design stuff that I was aware of as a kid was HGTV with my mom and, her and I rearranging furniture. Okay, I'm talking in circles, so I'm really sorry. Try to keep up with the timeline here because I'm keep going back and forth in my life. Anthropologie, whatever. While I was working there was when I started my home line for Basil, because I was like, I love vintage in every aspect of vintage, and I can't sell furniture because I know that that would be, how do you ship things like that? You can't, and I wasn't doing like a ton of trunk shows. I was mostly selling online. Eventually, I left Anthropologie. I left there in 2019. I had worked my way up to management, whatever. Didn't want to do it anymore. And I just started doing freelance for the most part, freelance photography, which is something I had always done after graduating, just, to make extra cash. Still to this day have a content curating social media job with a restaurant that I love called Senti, and so I still work with them, but that was something that I started around that time too. So I was just collecting different checks, working freelance, trying to make Basil be my main source of income, so having more free time, I thought I would have more free time to invest in my company, right? I was offered a job as a buyer for a film, like an indie film. So I went around thrifting to different places for this film to provide costumes, whatever. So, it was all like Y2K was the movie. What was the movie called? Oh, Dear Zoe, filmed here in Pittsburgh. So that was my first introduction to the film world, and I was like, whoa, this is cool. And so I did that. It led to other jobs, like someone asked me to be an extra in something, which led to me being a stand-in, which, if you don't know, a stand-in is basically a body double for Mackenzie Davis in a Christmas movie that they were making called Happiest Season. So if you haven't seen Happiest Season, watch it if you want. It's a fun little Kristen Stewart Christmas movie. So this is in 2019, and I was like, sure, I can do that. I don't know. Why not? And I had so much fun on that production. Like, I was just so enamored. I was there every day. I got to know the crew. Like, if you're a stand-in that's for one of the main characters, you really do become a part of the crew. If you're there, like, kind of whenever, like here and there, you're a little bit more considered background. But yeah, I made so many friends. I became really good friends with a producer's assistant, or with the producer and director's assistant. I'm still friends with her. And, whatever. I was just like, I want to work in film now. This is like so much fun. Granted, I had the most fun job on a film set. Like, basically being a stand-in is like, you get all the glamour and all the glory, and you don't have to work hard at all. So what you do is if I'm an actor and this is the shot that they want, right? My stand-in will come and sit here, and they'll set up all the lighting and make sure that the stand-in looks good, because then when the actor comes into place, it's already lit and it's already framed, so they know exactly what it's gonna look like with the lookalike, so that the actor doesn't have to stand there while they're setting up, because sometimes setups will take like 45 minutes for them to get all the lighting and cameras right and angles, whatever. So that was my job. I stood there in place of someone else. But I had fun with it too. Like, you were supposed to wear colors that matched what your character was wearing. So her name was Harper. If Harper was wearing a green dress or something, the next day I would go to the costume truck, I would ask them what she was wearing the next day, and I would go home, and they would provide me with colors if I wanted to, but I wanted to be comfortable. I wanted to be warm because it was cold outside. It was in February. So, you know, whatever. I came in with my own wardrobe. And so I became really interested in script supervising. It's not a glamorous job whatsoever. You are making sure that things will cut together. I don't know. I'll put in a timestamp if you don't care and want to skip forward. But basically, what a script supervisor does is they make sure that, like, okay, if I'm going like this during these few words, when the camera angle changes, I need to make sure that my hands are here, okay? Otherwise, it's not going to cut together. So if they like a couple of takes and my hand movements aren't matching from angle to angle, it's hard to make cuts. Do you ever notice when you're watching a movie that, you know, an actor will have like her hair behind her when it's like a certain angle, and then another angle, you notice her hair is like a little bit different? Like, a script supervisor would pay attention to those things and would be like, oh, your hair should be tucked behind your left ear. It should always be tucked behind your left ear during these words. And then, or it's not tucked, and then she tucks it halfway through the scene. Like, these are all things that the script supervisor takes account of, which is insane. But I kind of have a visual photographic memory, like not for, you know, not for reading or anything like that, but I am really good at knowing where things are, because if I saw it, then I will know where it is. Like, people are like, where did I leave my glasses? I'm like, oh, you left them on the coffee table inside. Like, I don't know why, but just my eye knows where things are. One of my many talents. I thought this job was cool. Pandemic hit. I'm unemployed like everybody else. Hired editing Michelle during the pandemic. This is when I retired Basil, put Basil to rest. 4 years. It was really sad. But I think I was just like ahead of my time. So I was like appreciated by those that loved me, but I would have done better probably in like New York or LA. And that's that. So I shut down Basil. Okay, continue. And I was like, well, I can utilize this time to take a script supervising course. And so I did. I did like 2 months of this course. It was really intense. I paid like $2,000, just added on to the things I wasted money on that I was never gonna do. Anyways, I thought that that's what I was gonna do. But then I went back to work about a year later. So pandemic started March 2020. I didn't go back to work until February 2021, February 1st. And I was just a PA. I had never done that before, but I was friends with all the other PAs. So they were like, hey, we're working. Come on, Michelle, let's go. So I was like, okay. I quickly realized that the glamorous world of being a stand-in was out the window when I became a PA. Not only was it a really grueling job, it's so hard on your body. I'm a big proponent of work-life balance, and you just don't really get that with being a production assistant. So I was on the cast team, which basically I was in charge of getting everybody at base camp breakfast. I did call myself the breakfast B word, because that's essentially what I was. And you know, then I stood around and was the quiet police, and I made sure everyone was quiet. I made sure to help, you know, you have to catch cast, whatever. It just was an awful job. You're first person in, the last person out. I was throwing up all the time. My body could not keep up. It was just awful. So during this time, while I was on set, I bought an iPad, and I was like, I'm gonna start like drawing and being creative while I'm on set, because I have no life now. I'm working 80, 90-hour weeks sometimes. At the time, Elliot, my husband, we had just moved in together. Sometimes he was working nights or I was working nights, and we would like not see each other for like 2 days, where it'd be like I'd get home at 7:30 in the morning from a night shoot, and he would have just left for work at like 6:45 a.m. So the bed was still warm. It was like living with a ghost. It was awful. I started drawing furniture designs because I was like, I don't know why. I just started doing it. And then that summer, remember when I was working on Happiest Season and I became friends with the director producer's assistant? Wow, good job, you paid attention, because that same woman, her name's Chelsea, she called me and she said, hey, I'm a producer's assistant for this TV show called A League of Their Own. However, I'm going to Hawaii for a wedding for 2 weeks. Can you cover for me as a producer's assistant? And I was like, sure, I'm not going to say no to money, because at this point I'd been out of work. Probably the last show I worked on like ended in April, and so it was like mid-May. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I go and become a producer's assistant. Didn't know what I was doing, but the producer, for whatever reason, really liked me. And I think it's my dazzling personality that took me far in film. And so when I was done with my 2 weeks, he called me a couple weeks later and he was like, hey, the COVID team is in dire need of help. I don't know what they need, but I'll give you X amount of money per week if you'll, work and help them. And I was like, sure, of course, whatever you say. Because that's the thing with film, like, if you keep getting offered jobs, you can't say no, because you don't have another job. Do you know what I'm saying? So then I was on the COVID team as a coordinator for extras to make sure that they were tested for COVID, and then I would give them the green light. You can be on set, or you're not allowed on set, etc. I didn't actually have to tell them that stuff. But I was coordinating with extras casting. I hope this isn't boring. I was coordinating with extras casting to get their people on set. Sometimes it was like a couple hundred people, that I'd have to make sure that they were all cleared for the day. So I did that for A League of Their Own, and then I was off for 2 months after that job, went to London, fell in love with London, and then worked on a show called A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks. Worked on that movie, doing the same thing, which led to the casting director asking me if I wanted a job. So then I became a casting coordinator with actual casting, which was good because I had done, COVID for like a year or so. And by the time I finished A Man Called Otto, I knew that COVID as a team was fading out. And I was like, okay, I need to do something for job security. And Chelsea, new Chelsea, who was the casting director, offered me a job. And so all the while, let's rewind. After COVID, when I went to my first job as a PA, remember I said I started designing furniture and stuff. I also started designing spaces, but like small projects, working with my in-laws on their home. A few people here and there would get in touch with me over the next couple of years, right? So it wasn't anything I could jump ship and go do full time, but I knew that I wanted to work in interior design somehow. I also knew that I didn't, because of the way my body was having such a visceral reaction to film, I knew that I couldn't sustain a lifestyle of being in film. And I also wanted to be able to see my husband, I was fortunate that when I switched to COVID, from that point on, I've only been working from home. So even when I was working in casting, I was working from home. So it was nice because I had a little bit of freedom, because then last summer, while I was working in casting, I started my YouTube channel. And so that was a year ago now. And when that show ended in November, that was the last employment I've had, you guys. And I think out of embarrassment, I haven't said anything, you know, like part of me was trying to get into interior design as a designer on my own, being stubborn, thinking I couldn't take a job where I'd be working for a designer that maybe I didn't respect or, you know, like their style or whatever. And part of me was also waiting for film to come back because I was like, well, this is where the money is and I'm working from home. So, you know, I definitely thought that I was going to go back to it for a little while until I figured out more design stuff, you know, or thinking maybe my YouTube channel is going to be wildly successful, which I think it is in my very small scale. I think it is wildly successful. You know, I just didn't know. And I just was waiting for the right thing to come along. I started applying to many, many jobs. And then finally, my mom said, why don't you look into our house? And I thought about it and I was like, okay, sure, I'll see if they have a position available. And so now I'm a design consultant at our house. I worked there for about a week now and I'm really enjoying it. It's a lot of information. It's intense. You have to learn so much product. You know, you have to know every single thing. Someone comes in and they're asking for something specific and it's not in the showroom, maybe it's online. You need to know it. So for the last few years, I knew that I wanted to work in the realm of interiors, and here I am, very happily employed. Finally, after 8 months, because you guys heard about the writer's strikes and all of that, so film's not coming back anytime soon, you know, but I don't want to go back to film. So I'm very excited about my position, and I know that there's room for growth in the company. So, plus it's a company that I grew up with. My mom has an Our House sofa that she's had for like 20 years. It's always been my favorite sofa. It's so comfy. There's many a times where I've stayed at my parents' house and chose not to take the guest room because I wanted to sleep on the sofa. I also really believe in the brand. They've been a sustainably forward brand for their entirety of their existence. So they started about 35 years ago, 1986. Anyways, I'm very happy with my position and I'm excited to see where it goes. So that's it. That's my insanely long career history. Thank you for sticking through this wild ride. I don't even think that I probably missed like half of my career, you know, because I don't know. I've done so much. I've just, you know, the chronic gig working is where it gets ya, because I'm like, I've taken so many odd jobs. I have no idea. So that's that. I hope it didn't disappoint. This is how I got to my interior design interest. I think it's been an interest of mine my whole life, you know? So here I am, but a mere mortal living in this world, trying to nest everywhere I go. So that's that. Next week's gonna be another home visit. Pretty exciting. It's gonna be a little bit different though. But you'll see. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you want to, but it really does make my day when you leave me little love notes, because I love you right back. Love you, bye.